Hey everyone, and thank you for tuning in to Amsterdam Dance Event 2020. I'm Jean-Paul Grobben, an Ableton certified trainer from Amsterdam, the Netherlands, and with this video I want to give you an introduction to the world of Max for Live. There's a lot to talk about. What is Max for Live? What can you do with it? Where can you get cool devices? And how do they work? So I want to break this video down into a few sections. First, I'll go through a few basic use cases that are more straightforward in their use within Ableton Live. And then a few advanced use cases, as Ableton Live can be linked to other applications by using Max for Live. At the end of this video, I want to break down the very first little patcher that I made myself in the process of learning Max, and to keep things smooth and simple and easy to follow. So hopefully this will give you a few handles to maybe start creating some things yourself in Max eventually. Okay, ready? Let's go. First of all, what is Max and what is Max for Live? Max on its own is an application with which you can create Max patches and Max for Live devices. So Max on its own is an application, as I said, but it's also a language, a visual programming language, which means that you can visually connect objects to each other in order to get something done instead of writing actual code. So having said that, what is Max for Live then? Well, Max is an extension for Ableton Live, and it's included with Ableton Live 10 Suite. And that means that you can use Max for Live devices in Ableton Live 10. And those Max for Live devices, a couple of them are included with the core library, but a lot of them you have to download yourself with packs or from the internet, for example from maxforlive.com. You can get a lot of free stuff there. But back to my Max for Live section here in my browser, I have a huge list of devices, as I said, coming from the packs that I downloaded earlier. I've created a few devices here. Those are in green, so I can go to my collections here and find all of them here. So let me take you through some of them and a couple other use cases as well. So we have a project here with 4 channels. The first one is my main drums, the second one is some percussion, the third is the bass, and the fourth is some pads. Let me show you what that sounds like. Exactly like that. Okay, cool. So the first device that I want to show you is probably the most common one and the most used one, which is the LFO. It comes with the core library of Live 10, so you can find it right here in the Max for Live section. So, what is it? Well, it's an LFO, a low frequency oscillator, which means that we get a waveform out of this thing, a slow moving waveform. And you can also see that as a movement, because we can assign this movement to any parameter on our screen. So, for example, I can click that map button and then assign it to this send knob here. Now, that doesn't sound all that great. Let me instead map it to the filter over here. Cool. So this is something you wouldn't be able to do without a Max for Live device. You know, modulate something that is totally unrelated to this device itself. So that's one of the cool things you can do with Max for Live. This LFO, however, we can make it go faster, maybe decrease the depth a little bit, slow it back down, link it to the tempo of the project. Set it to, I guess, this speed, and we can change the shape. Let's set it to down. And now we maybe add some drums. I guess this one isn't playing right now, but doesn't matter. Here it comes. Yeah, there you go. So the LFO adds a rhythmic element to the sound. If I turn this thing off, now we just get some pads, some slow sounding lush pads. But put an LFO on it and suddenly you get something rhythmic, which adds to the groove of the entire track. Pretty nice. Now, on that same note, we also have the envelope follower. It's a similar kind of modulator. And I can put this here on my drums. Let me solo those. And then we get the hi-hat loop, but here is the kick and the snare. You can actually see them coming in here. And then there's a yellow line drawn on top of that again. So that's the movement, once again. And we can assign that movement, again, to any parameter on our screen. Now this looks a little janky, so let's increase the fall. So now that smoothens out those curves. You can add some rise as well, some attack basically. So we get those smooth curves. Nice. So that's the envelope follower. It's especially useful in a case like, for example, if you have a live drummer and you have his kick drum hooked up to your interface. So you get the kick sound right into Ableton Live. You can let it go through the envelope follower, and that way let the kick drum, the acoustic kick drum, control things in Ableton Live. Really nice. Here's another modulator that I would like to show you called sequence modulation. And it comes from, let me show you, the the Tricky Traps by Sonic Faction Pack. I'm not sure if this one is free actually, but it's very nice nonetheless, but it's the same principle. Let me remove this LFO for a second and instead map this modulator to the filter. So we have a grid here and we can change whatever this will look like and in turn sound like. Alright. So modulators, super powerful and fun to work with, and also nice to get some unexpected results sometimes. So can really recommend those. Another cool audio effect that I have here is the convolution reverb. So let me put that one on the master channel so we can really hear well what that sounds like. Now, it's in a name, of course, it's a reverb, but it's a special one at that. Because it works with samples, and these samples are called impulse responses. And that means that they're responses to impulses. So let me explain what that means. We have type here on our screen which says real places, and that means that there was a recording made in one of these real places. So let me click down in this menu and I can see that there are a lot of churches here, for example. So an impulse response. Someone fires, for example, a gun or makes a very loud sound in any case, and then records the reverb tail from that, and then cut off the initial sound, the initial bang. So then you're left with the response to the impulse response. So you can throw any sample in here, but these are all included with this device, which are already great and fun to play with. But I have to say, these are very realistic reverbs, and usually these are not used in electronic music. It's mostly algorithmic reverbs because they are much more flexible. And an example of that is that you cannot, for example, change the decay without the sound stopping. And then it's not stopping, you know. Oh, there you go. All right. So anyway, you can throw any sample in here aside from just browsing through there. But for example, you can throw a kick in there and see what that sounds like. Interesting. Another one. That's a hi-hat. So this is what it would sound like if this entire track would be played through a hi-hat. Okay, that's kind of weird. But anyway, you can get very weird results with this, which can be, in turn, very, very interesting for your sound design. So keep an eye on this one. Try it out sometime. Throw a couple things in there, or check out the already included impulse responses, which are good on their own. Okay, the last audio effect that I would like to show you is surround. Also for free with Ableton Live 10 Suite. I just want to mention that, you know, I'm not going to only show like paid products, so I want to show you some free stuff as well. So anyway, I put this on my master channel right now, which means that all the sound from this track will now be divided over these 4 speakers, which is really nice. So as you can see, we have different setups here for center and for circle. I put it in circle because I'm facing forward and my speakers are actually in this position. I don't have 2 rear speakers, but if I would have had 2 rear speakers, I could have connected them this way. And so yeah, leave this one on 1, 2, and this one on output 3, 4 of my audio interface. And now this is like a crossfader between all 4 speakers. And of course, I can put this thing on different group channels as well if I want to group different kind of sounds together and put them on different kind of speakers. So surround device, super cool. You may not use it, but it's great that it's in there, and you can do it with Max for Live. Or thanks to Max for Live, I should say. Some other cool devices which are not effects. Let me start out with the granulator. So this is a synthesizer, also for free, which works with samples. So it's kind of like simpler, but it has a different method of creating the sound that it will play with. So let me browse for some guitar sound. I don't know. All these chords. Oh, fine. I'll take this one. Okay. And now I'm holding down my my A key, which is playing a C3. But we're not hearing much yet because we have this file position, which is stuck here in the center. So I can select this and move this to the left. And we get more sound. Now, what's actually happening? Well, it's a granular synthesizer, which means that it works with little grains of audio. You can decide how short or how long those grains should be with this knob right here. But now it's just playing the same sequence over and over, and it sounds very looped. So that's not very nice, and that's where the power of the granulator comes in. So this spray button over here, the spray knob, spreads out the starting points of those different grains. And that's how we can really easily get a sound with a lot of movement in it. And mind you, this was a guitar chord. It doesn't sound anything like it anymore. And this is just, you know, it's completely dry. There's no reverb on it or anything. This is just the envelope, which we can find over here, by the way, if we click that button here on the left. So now I increased the release up to, what is it, 6 seconds. So we get a nice fade out time and a nice kind of atmosphere very easily. So granulator, also a very powerful tool and for free with Max for Live. Another thing that, the last thing that's for free with Max for Live in Ableton Live here is this instrument. It's actually a drum rack with multiple instruments in it. There's a couple of different kind of drum synths. They're very simple. So we have a kick, we have a hi-hat. I have one, they're the same, but one is meant for an open hi-hat. So maybe we can change it into an open hi-hat, make it longer. There we go. Now we have a closed and an open hi-hat, a snare, we have a tom, clap, a clang, cymbal, an FM sound, and we have a sampler that we can throw samples in there. Now, these are fun little drum sounds to play around with. They're not very complex, but nonetheless, you get them for free, so definitely check them out sometime if you haven't already. Okay, so I was talking about in the beginning about what Max is, and it's, yeah, like I said, a visual programming language. Now you can compare it to modular synthesis if you're already familiar with that. This is actually a Max for Live modular synthesizer. So it was made in Max for Live, and we can open that here. And this is the editor, and now we can add, for example, an oscillator, and we can add some modulators, and then we can connect these different, oh man, I should move this one, connect this one, boom. See, so that's how it works. You connect different modules to each other. So what does Max for Live look like? Well, I'm not quite there yet. What I want to cover right now are the more advanced use cases and the ones that I, let's say, specialize in. I'm not a programmer, and I've only been doing Max for Live for a very short time, but I've mostly been doing work for a company called ShowSync, and what I've been doing is styling their Max for Live devices. Now, one very cool product that ShowSync makes is video sync, which allows us to use video in Ableton Live and extend the functionality of Ableton Live with that. So what I mean with that is you have this interface. Now imagine if you could just put a video file into these slots instead of just audio files and then play that back on a separate screen. Well, that's exactly what you can do with video sync. So let me show you what that looks like. Here's the app, video sync. So video sync is just a screen, right? It's just a black screen. That is the application. We have some preferences that we can change, but it's very, very lightweight. So the idea of this is that video sync, it becomes the video display for Ableton Live. And we can do that because we can see how all these knobs move around when you touch them. So let me show you what I mean with that. We can go to here where I have some videos. I don't know why it's right-clicking, but there we go. Let's take this video, just put it on a regular audio channel, and then just play the video. There we go. So we can control the opacity of this video with the volume fader, and that's what I mean with we can control video sync with the interface of Live. We can borrow these elements, so we don't need our own interface. It makes it much easier to dive into using video if it's a workflow you're already used to. So if we want two videos, we can just put them like here. Oh, this one has sound in it. I should turn that off, sorry. Oop, there we go. So now we have two videos playing at the same time. Now, this has nothing to do with Max for Live, just to be clear. This is a separate application. But what we can use Max for Live for is controlling effects that are built into video sync. So we have video sync plugins, and these are Max for Live devices. So let me, for example, put a transform on this second video that I just put on here. And the transform can be used to reposition the image. So as you can see, I put this on this channel over here, so that's why it's only affecting that video. If I wanted to affect both videos, I simply group these two video channels, and then boom, we can now control both of them together. So imagine what you can do with all of that, with all these video effects, blur effects, and instruments, I must add as well, because we have a video simpler that you would use the same way you would use an audio simpler. You can put it in drum rack so you can trigger different videos on your screen. So I don't want to be talking about all these different apps too much. I want to keep it focused on Max for Live. But the cool thing about Max for Live is that we can use these devices as remote controls for other applications. So let's leave it at that with video sync for now. If you're more interested about it, you can look it up on showsync.com. Now I want to talk about another application though with this project right here. And it's about Beam, which is also made by ShowSync. And I really just want to show it to demonstrate the crazy things you can do thanks to Max for Live and the things you can develop with it. So again, Beam is a separate application that uses Max for Live to communicate between Ableton Live and Beam. But Beam is actually a very simple app. It is a patcher, and not every one of you is probably familiar with lighting and how those things work in venues and theaters and stuff like that. But basically what we can do now, thanks to Beam, and I'll show you in just a second, is create a lighting composition in Ableton Live using, well, regular controls and automation and things like that. And then we use Beam as a sort of middleman between Ableton Live and the actual lighting fixtures. So normally lighting fixtures work with DMX, and you connect fixtures to each other with DMX cables, which are actually just XLR cables. But then where does it interface with your computer? Well, you have a DMX interface for that. Just like you would have an audio interface or a MIDI interface, you have DMX interfaces. And Beam can use a DMX interface to communicate with those lights. So how does that work? Well, for example, we can add a fixture. Let's just take one of these, and let's say we want to use 10 of those fixtures. And well, universe 1, address 1, that's fine for now. I'm not going to explain too much about this right now. But what is important is the tag. And now I can give this group of lights, these 10 lights, a name. So yeah, my group, I'll just call it, oops, my bad, sorry. My group, my bad, sorry, that's better. All right. Add to patch. So now I have my 10 fixtures here in this list, and they all have their own address, their own DMX address to which they listen. And now I can take an instrument, a lighting instrument, and I have a lot of instruments here already in a whole set that I will show you in just a second, but use a library beam. Let's take moving head as an instrument. Oh. Wrong channel. Doesn't matter. And now from this drop down, I can select my group, my bad, sorry. And then I can control the intensity of those 10 lights, right? It's pretty simple. It's pretty straightforward. The only thing that we don't see is the lights, because there are no lights. I don't have any lights in this studio right now. But what we can do is we can connect Beam to a visualizer, which is another application, in this case, Capture. I have another demo set right here. Oh, and it's already moving. Look at that. And I should actually delete this channel. And I'm actually going to open the demo set here in Beam as well. That's probably the best idea. All right. So we have our patch loaded. And let me just say, you can download this demo patch and the demo set as well for Capture. You can download the trial version of Capture as well and use this with our demo live set. So everything can work on your computer, no problem. But you just need the right tools for it. So we have Ableton Live and we have Beam, and we can control the lights using the Max for Live devices for Beam. And then that DMX data is now being sent to the visualizer instead of actual lights. So that's pretty cool. Okay, so we have a music track down here that I made once, and yeah, all the other channels here are just lighting instruments. So let me play this. So there's that sparky sound. See, which is basically just a strobe or something that looks like it. So you have your lighting composition right here in Ableton Live. And of course, if you want to do a live performance with it, not with the arrangement view, but with the session view, you can easily move these clips to the same channels, the corresponding channels here. And you get all the automation that you had here in the arrangement view as well here in the session view. So that's usually how you should work if you would want to anyway with a tool like this. You can create your composition here, move it later to the session view to do your actual live performance. And then you have super responsive lights, always in sync with your beats. And yeah, you don't need a lighting technician to do the actual show anymore. Everything can be pre-programmed, but still dependent on your decisions in your performance, which is really interesting and really refreshing, I think. And with that, I think it's time to move on from Beam and VideoSync. Those are the two products that I help work on. But there are other tools as well. So for example, there is Ebo Suite by Ebo Studios, which is another app that can run alongside Live to support video playback and manipulation. Ebo Suite's workflow is slightly different, and that especially goes for Zwobot, which does not have a separate application and only runs through Max plugins to create its many video effects. Regardless, each of these video extensions have their own unique features, all very interesting and worth to explore. The last thing I want to show and talk about is one of the things that I made for a device for ShowSync. Because that's basically how I learned to program Max for Live. I was always interested for years, but I never really found a clear purpose to motivate myself to try this out until I had a clear purpose, which was upgrading the UI from these plugins, you know. And it took a couple of months, and everything goes in steps. So since I'm still pretty much a beginner, I think this would be a great opportunity for me to give you a few starting tips if you would find this interesting. So let's open up one of these Max for Live devices that I'm talking about, which is Live MTC. Now, to give you a bit of context, it's looking for another application, Live MTC Bridge, and I can actually open that. Let's see, Live MTC Bridge. And what this thing does is it sends out an MTC MIDI timecode signal. And that allows us to, for example, link Pro Tools to Ableton Live. So once the application is launched and the plugin is connected, it actually shows a linked chain right here, and all the interface parts light up. And if I close the MTC Bridge app again, then it goes back to those 3 dots, which to me indicate that it's looking for something or it's waiting for something to happen anyway. So I made this, or at least the way it looks, and not the way it works. That's the hard part that I luckily was able to skip. But let's open this device, and I have this little button down here, and with that I can open any Max for Live device. So I'm not sure if you may have noticed before with any of the other devices that I have shown, but for example, if we just quickly go back to the Max for Live LFO, here we go, we can click this one as well, and then the LFO opens. There we go, we can open this whole area, and here we have patching mode. So if we click that, we go out of presentation mode, and then we can see the inner workings of the LFO device. Now, I'm not going to go all through this because this is a science upon its own, and there's a lot of stuff that I don't even understand yet. Mind you, I've only been doing this for a couple of months, but let's see. Let's open up the device that I wanted to show you. All right, patching mode. There we go. So all the yellow lines are mostly colors, except for the yellow objects. Those are patchers. But let me explain what that means. This is a patcher. We're looking at one right now, but you can put patchers in patchers, kind of like you can put channels in groups and groups and groups in Ableton Live. So if we double click holding down Command on this thing, I can open up this patcher. So this little object right here is actually all this with one input and 6 outputs. And as you can see, this device has 1 input and 6 outputs. Let me make this a little bit bigger so it's maybe a bit more obvious. There we go. This is the object. Here we have my my colors object. So this is where all the coloring of all the objects is being taken care of, and all the different situations that it should be handled in. So for example, if the device turns off, if you turn off the device, well, you have to tell all the parameters what they should look like. So there goes a lot of time into that stuff. Anyway, the thing that I really wanted to show was this animation, and it's getting a yellow line, this object, and this object is actually a patcher as well, only this is a different kind of patcher, namely a B patcher. I guess this would be the A patcher then. Anyway, a B patcher simply means it contains a lot of stuff as well, but you can actually see them. So this is like a little see-through window, so you can see inside the patcher. So again, I can double click with Command on this. And this is really what I wanted to show you, these 3 circles. To any new user, you may think, that this is a ready-to-go object. You can just select this somewhere, put it into your patcher, and there you go. You have 3 loading dots. But sadly, that's not the case. I had to make this myself, and that was the challenge that I set out for myself. And yeah, because why wouldn't it be a ready-to-go object? There's so many objects, and there's still so many objects that I don't even know. But that's the interesting part. That's the journey. So if you want to divide something or multiply something, and you need an object for that, well, then you can use the search sidebar, and then just look for multiply. And then usually there's a lot of objects, and down here are even like forum posts, maybe asking the same question. So there's a lot of stuff that you can find here just from the search sidebar. And it has helped me a lot. So, okay, anyway, let's open up this patch and see what's in here. Because this is like the very first patch that I made entirely, and it was like, wow, I made this and it works. That's really cool. Even though it's incredibly simple. But I think that makes it perfect to show how it works. Okay, so let's unlock the patch. And as you can see, when I unlock the patch, the animation stops. If I lock the patch again, then it starts again. Okay, so why is that? Well, first let's make this a little bit bigger. There we go. Okay. So we have a metronome and an object. So this object always begins with the name of the object, QMetro. And if you want to create an object, you simply double click and you just type QMetro and press enter. And then we have a QMetro object. And this one has 2 inlets and 1 outlet. So you can hover over the inlets and outlets, which are always at the top, the inlets, and the outlets are always at the bottom. You can hover over them so you can read what they sort of expect, or what they do, or what they're supposed to put out, let's say. Okay, so this is a metronome, and it generates a bang, which is basically, you know, a clap every 1800 milliseconds. So every 2 seconds it creates a clap, basically. Then there's like an argument saying it's always on. Is it on? Yes, it's on. That's the 1. 0 would mean no in that sense. So the metronome is always on. It doesn't have to be always on. We can remove this part actually. So now it's just a metronome, but we need to trigger it. So we can create a button, for example. I just do that by pressing the B for button. That's really simple. And we can connect the output to the metronome and that way turn it on and off. Now, you don't actually see that until we... There we go. It doesn't work. I guess because I have to refresh something. But anyway, let's go back. All right. Okay. So then here we have a message, hidden $1. Now, I actually don't really know what that means, but what it does, that I do know. What it does is it turns on hide on lock. So as you can see, we have the inspector here where you have a lot of options for some objects. Some objects are also really simple and don't have a lot of options, as you can see. But this one does. And all of them have these parameters here. So hide on lock. So that's basically what this does. It receives a bang. And if I select this and press that, as you can see, this one turns on and now turns off because it's still running. So every 1800 milliseconds, this button is pressed. And then 600 milliseconds later, this button is pressed, which unhides this dot again. But at the same time, because 600 milliseconds have passed, this button is pressed and this middle circle is hide. And 600 milliseconds later, it's unhidden again. And then another 600 milliseconds. So there we go. And that's how we create our animation. And as I said, those yellow lines are simply to feed color information. So to tell what color this circle should be. So that's in short really what I wanted to show you, just to give you an idea. What is Max for Live? What can you use it for? What does it look like on the inside? And how am I supposed to make sense of all these wires and objects? There's so much to talk about with this stuff. But nonetheless, I hope it was helpful. It was educational. You can always look me up on soundsuite.nl if you want to let me know what you thought of this video. Because yeah, it's a little bit different this year. No physical ADE, just online. And yeah, I hope to see all of you, whoever watched this video, again next year. And stay safe. Thank you for watching. Bye.